Good evening. I'm Dr. Emmett Brown. I'm standing on the parking lot at Twin Pines Mall. It's Saturday morning, October 26, 1985, 1:18 a.m. And this is temporal experiment number 1.
Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity, where we talk about politics, pop culture, drinking culture, and anything else that comes up. Joining me as always is Brandon.
Hello, my people.
Kale. And Jim.
Hello, everyone.
All right, we are continuing to delve, as you can see from our backgrounds, continuing to delve into the 1980s cartoon atmosphere. Today we're going to be talking about 1985, a year that I think is a pretty big year. There's a lot of really big stuff in here. There's one that's going to be kind of a cheat, but I'll explain why we didn't talk about them earlier and why it's totally not my fault. But first of all, what are we drinking tonight, Brandon?
I am kind of finishing off some almost done bottles, so I've got Knob Creek 9 and Chinar together.
Fair enough. Gail?
He's obsessed with Chinar. As you know, earlier today, I was debating on a few things and mulling about the store. I went and checked out the new Hy-Vee and Grimes, and I settled on a classic Old Forester 100.
And if you check back at our $25 bourbon taste testing, you'll see that Old Forester, spoiler alert, did very well in our tasting. Jim, what are you having?
Well, last week I think I made a Mai Tai, and I enjoyed the combination of the spiced rum and amaretto. And I had some squirt left over from the Super Bowl, so I thought I'd combine those two. And the squirt wasn't quite enough, so I put some orange juice in it, so it's kind of a pseudo Mai Tai.
Fair enough. And I, for no particular reason, am having so I've never been a particular fan of the old fashioned. I think it's just too sweet of a cocktail, generally speaking. We will cover it on the channel one of these days against my will. But there is one version of the old fashioned that I like, and that is the Pisco old fashioned. Now, typically I float the bitters on top, but it was sitting here for a few minutes. The bitters have kind of incorporated into the drink, which is fine. And yeah, Pisco is great. It's basically a brandy, an unaged brandy from either Peru or Chile. I am biased, and some people may disagree, but in my mind, Peru makes the best Pisco, and that is just all there is to it. But anyway,
What kind of bitters?
I just went Angostura. And by the way, I got some Boker's bitters in the mail the other day. So we will be doing something with those on the channel in the relatively near future, I think. All right. So the first one we're going with today is one that I didn't watch religiously, although I did watch it a fair amount. And that is the Berenstain Bears.
The Berenstain Bears. The Berenstain Bears.
And if my pronunciation of that makes your eye twitch a little bit, it does me a little bit too. I could have sworn it was the Berenstain Bears. It is another one of those Mandela effect things. A great many people sort of remember things one way, even though that's not really a thing. So I don't know. Did you guys watch this one?
I read the books more than watched it.
Oh yeah, they did have a pretty big kind of multimedia thing going on.
Yeah, well, I would have guessed the books were first, but there was a lot of them.
Kale?
Yeah, I remember growing up with the books, and then they had a few TV specials in the series, I think. But yeah, very family oriented, kind of hillbilly-ish bears. They wore bibs and straw hats and no shoes, and were kind of country. I guess they were the country bears, or was that a different thing?
No, I think that's a different thing. Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, the father's dressed like, farmer type guy. And Brandon, you are also correct. It is based on the book series. So the book series did come first, and the mother's wearing like a house dress, and the kids are the kids. And Jim, do you watch this one very much?
I don't think so. I have a hard time piecing out which things I watched as a kid and which things I just watched with my kids when they were kids. So I know I've seen some Berenstain Bears. I just don't remember if I watched them.
Berenstain Bears. I know. I have a hard time with it too. Every time I see that, I'm like, that can't be right. It was Berenstain Bears. That just can't be
Dr.
right.
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. That's my
You know what I
favorite.
heard the other day? That the Mandela effect's not real.
Well, I mean, I look at Berenstain Bears, and every time I look at it, it looks incredibly wrong to me. I'm not saying that it's. I'm not saying that it was written that way and they changed it or anything. I'm just saying in my mind, I remembered it as Berenstain Bears.
But as far as someone claiming that the Mandela effect isn't real, that in itself might be a Mandela effect.
I was thinking the same thing.
Maybe they're just remembering.
I think it's a conspiracy to convince everyone that it's not real.
I don't really have anything else to say about the Berenstain Bears. It was just another one of those kind of fun, very family oriented, kind of wholesome shows where I remember the father was always like a little too trusting of people and like, you know, maybe not the most sophisticated, and the kids had to kind of save him from his own, you know, making bad decisions because he kind of trusted people too much.
But
But it was
have his jug. He did have that jug once in a while.
well, okay, we all need our jugs sometimes.
Speaking of jug.
Moving on. So one that I don't know if you guys remember at all. I remember, and I found some interesting things about it, and that is Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines. Did you guys watch that ever?
I've never even heard of that.
I remember the Bigfoot toy, which I thought was ridiculous.
So I remember. So this is not actually a cartoon series. This was a mini series, and it was so it was part of something else. I can't remember now exactly what it was. It was part of another series where it was just a little bit of it. And it is so it was 6 minute, 9 segments lasting 6 minutes. So it was like about an hour altogether. And I just thought it was interesting. So Bigfoot was driven by Yank Justice, which is just a great name. I just saw that and I'm like, wow, if you were to pick the name of the guy that's going to drive Bigfoot, his name should be Yank Justice, like, because that's perfect. Then the black and gold Bigfoot, it's not Bigfoot, it's called Black and Gold, that's the name of the truck, was driven by 2 twin sisters named Red and Redder. I'll bet you can't guess what color their hair was.
Purple.
Oh, so close. Orange Blossom Special was driven by Professor D, and Warlord was driven by Close McCall, which is just great. So Lance Lealt played Yank Justice, and I sort of fell down a hole with this because I was I thought his voice sounded really familiar. And he also played in one of my favorite TV shows from the 1980s that I loved as a kid, on the Fox lineup back when Fox was like a total joke. I don't know. Do you guys remember like when the Fox, was on and it was just like you had the 3 networks, and then Fox was kind of like almost not really, considered to be part of really a network.
Well, in local areas, it was Channel 13 was kind of the last one, and then you had to go all the way up the dial to 17 to get
right.
to it.
KDSM, Fox 17. So one of the shows in there that I loved was Werewolf. It was about a werewolf, as you can probably guess. Anyway, Lance Lealt played the main antagonist on that show. He was the guy that was going after Eric Cord. And it got me looking at his IMDb page. And he also played he played a character on one episode of the show Sledgehammer, which I know Brandon is a big fan of, and I think Kale's a big fan of. Jim, I don't know if you saw Sledgehammer.
Yeah, I saw it.
Sledgehammer is it's a great show. The character he played on there was General Mills, which is great in and of itself. And that episode, which is the season finale of season 2, I think. That episode has a truck getting robbed, and one of the people that's driving those trucks is a very, very young Brent Spiner, probably right before he started playing Data. So that is me going down the rabbit hole of Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines. Basically, the whole thing's about
yank hole.
Yeah, very much so. And it had some good. Christopher Collins played one of the henchmen, who's also he was Starscream and Cobra Commander and like a million other things. And Peter Cullen voiced one of the villains. It was just a really cool thing. It had a lot of the voices that you kind of know, and I thought it was really neat.
It's almost like you were walking down the great shining path of the brave monster trucks,
right?
Was that Clutch?
Yes, that's a clutch
I
song.
thought
But
so.
no, Bigfoot was like a big deal in the 80s.
Oh
It
no,
was
yeah,
quite a deal.
he was, but there
They
wasn't even
had
one Bigfoot. There was like 6 different Bigfoots, and there was like some that were
yeah,
bigger and some that were faster. And
the one called Tundra had 10-foot
Isn't that just
tall.
different monster trucks?
And well, it was based on the original Bigfoot, but it had like these really tall, white wheeled, real skinny tires, but they were like 10 feet tall. And they brought it to the Firestone plant where my dad worked and had it sitting out front there one day. Because they make all the industrial tires. Because if people don't know this, the big monster truck tires, those big balloon tires, is the same thing that you see on what's called a Terragator, which is these great big machines that drive around in the fields out here that they use for spraying and stuff like that. They usually have 3 wheels on them.
But no, Brandon, there was multiple, but like the actual Bigfoot truck, there wasn't one. There was like 4 that all had the name, and there was like some of them were like bigger, and some of them were like faster, and some of them, I don't know, they were all like a little bit different, and they like used them for different things. And there was a big crossover where the Undertaker, I think, drove Gravedigger, because Gravedigger was like the second biggest monster truck or most famous monster truck of that era. Like everybody knew Bigfoot, and you probably knew Gravedigger too.
So I think Gravediggers lasted longer.
Did anyone have the toy?
I think I had one of them. I mean, there's a million Bigfoots out there. I think I had 1 or 2 of them.
Did you have the one that the claws came out of, the tires?
The claw. When it gets out, nothing gets in its way.
Nothing. It can take on anything.
Even the unexpected is no match for the claw.
No. That was the whole thing. Wasn't that like monster trucks? Like, wasn't that another cartoon where like the trucks actually turned into monsters or something?
Maybe. There was a cartoon series, wasn't there? Or maybe that was just a ploy for the toys. But I remember those trucks. There was different ones. They all had the claw things that came out of the wheels. But I'm not sure if that was with the monster trucks, or maybe maybe
Bigfoot.
No, it wasn't, because Bigfoot, it was literally just a one thing. In fact, you can watch it on YouTube. Like they put it together as one thing. And I think it's about 53 minutes or something like that. I mean, it's a pretty formulaic, like there's some bad guys that are looking for a temple that has a secret. I think it's the Fountain of Youth, and it can only be stopped by guys in monster trucks because
of course,
because obviously.
And thus the Fast and the Furious was born.
It sort of is. It's a little Fast and the Furious. Like, and by the way, also I wrote this down. I don't know why, but I feel like I should say it. Professor D had a pet armadillo. So, if you're a fan of monster trucks or people with pet armadillos, I think this is for you. And if you like Yank Justice, which, God, if that's not a gay porn name, I don't know what. Okay. So there were apparently other things than Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines going on in 1985. So we'll have to move on. This is one I've looked this up a little bit. I know a very little bit about it, and I think it probably deserves more discussion than we can maybe give it. But that's the Care Bears.
The Care Bears countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Care Bears started in 85. It was huge. It was kind of a phenomenon. It went 62 episodes. Now this is another one. This is one of those ones we're going to talk about this again when we get to G.I. Joe. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about G.I. Joe when we talk about 1980s cartoons. There was actually Care Bears specials on going all the way back to 1983. But 1985 is when they actually got their own series. So 1985 is when the series started. So what are you guys' experience with Care Bears?
Well, mine is twofold. Aren't they kind of also in early something? Aren't they like they were in like Happy Meals and stuff? Like, I think way before like Beanie Babies or anything. Like they were kind of a collector thing. Also, we got in trouble. Me and my sister got in trouble on the night we were going to go see the Care Bears movie in the theater. And they ended up as punishment saying we couldn't go to the movie. And I've never seen it.
Brandon's villain backstory.
Wow. Scarred for life.
Yep.
Just real quickly, Brandon, you're right. So this was based on a property that was developed back as early as 1981. And then they did a bunch of different little things here and there. 1983, they had, I think, their first special. And then 1985 was when they got their like actual like television show television.
Well, and I remember less about the actual cartoon. I did watch it, but I also tend to get the cartoon and the commercial confused, because in my head, all I see in the commercial is them like, yeah, you know, and the light shoots out of their chest and whatever.
So
Yeah,
I don't remember anything.
power.
So
Go ahead,
I
Jim.
remember them being similar to My Little Pony in that they all had their identifying cutie tattoo thing, and it shot
Yeah.
sparkly things. But did they have like individual powers? I don't remember.
Well,
That's
they all
what
had
abilities.
a thing. Like, so there's like
Yeah.
Tenderheart Bear was like a lion, and so he was like the brave one. I don't remember if they had specific powers. The one thing I would
Kinda
say,
like
I
this.
think when it comes to the Care Bears and My Little Pony, because when in the 1980s, like all cartoons had some amount of gender. Like if you watch GI Joe is just for boys. If you watch My Little, and by the way, I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying this way it was. My Little Pony was just for girls, and I feel like Care Bears was like in a weird spectrum where it was between like your unisex cartoons and your girl cartoons. So they were like girl oriented, but like if you were a guy, you could maybe get away with watching a couple episodes, you know, here and there.
So I just have to add, I just got heckled by my son saying, if your podcast is called Intoxicated Masculinity, what are you doing talking about Care Bears?
I think
Yeah.
the real question is, why did it take us so long to talk about the Care
Right.
Bears? I like some of the villains had kind of cool names. There was Professor No Heart or Professor Cold Heart, and then there's like another one that's just like No Heart, and he's like, I don't know, he like takes away the hearts or something, and it sounded really creepy.
Yeah, that's
Hole in his
kinda-
chest.
Well, like you were saying about like there's the lion is Tenderheart or whatever. Then there was like one with a rainbow that like made everybody happy, and there was one I remember that had a thundercloud with a little blue lightning bolt coming out of it or something like that, and like she was always sad or something like that. But yeah, they would all. It was very formulaic. They all had kind of their own personalities, like the Care Bears, or like the Smurfs, or like the Rainbow, not Rainbow, the My Little Ponies. But yeah, like I'm shooting a little thing out of their hearts. I know about it mostly because my sister was into all that kind of stuff. She had the Rainbow Brights and the Care Bears and the My Little Pony. I don't know why I keep forgetting about My Little Pony. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, yeah, I just like remember like the whole formula was, you know, whatever the problem was at the end of the story, you know, they would all like come together and shoot love out of their chest or whatever and make everybody feel better.
By the way, the other villain was Scare Bear, which I find to be kind of I feel like there's like a serial killer out there who just nicknamed himself Scare Bear.
There's also a apparently an internet conspiracy, but maybe not even a real one, that Funshine Bear was originally listed as female, and then in the more modern times was listed as male, voiced by females at first, and then eventually listed by males in the remake. So possibly early gender queer representation.
Or they were just trying to get rid of female characters. Yeah, I wish I had more to say about the specific episodes and stuff. I watched an episode or so, which you can watch a lot of these on YouTube. By the way, that's one thing I've noticed sort of doing some of the research for, especially this year. A lot of this stuff is on YouTube. Like a crazy amount of cartoons from the 1980s are just available right there on YouTube for free. And that's really cool. Like I said, the monster, the Bigfoot and the muscle machines, that whole thing, you can watch the full thing on YouTube, beginning to end. Care Bears, I don't know if everything's on YouTube, but a lot of it is. There's a ton of episodes, which I think is pretty cool.
Is Thunder on? Because you know that's the only thing I care about.
I bet you it will
Well,
be.
you certainly can't have the theme song, or you'll get
Right.
demonetized. Not that I would know that from experience. By the way, as you people watching this will see exactly how long the intros I use when we're introducing these things, and I guarantee you that they're shorter than the ones I want to use because YouTube doesn't like that for whatever reason.
Copyright.
Anyway, so the next one, I really have two things I want to say about it mainly. Even though I loved it, it's one of those ones that I watched all the time and loved a lot, but don't really
Gummy Bears, bouncing here and there and everywhere. High adventure that's beyond compare. They are the Gummy Bears.
I thought as intro themes go, Gummy Bears had one of the best intro themes of any cartoon of the 1980s. Like they put production value. Like this was like when they were like the cartoons would actually put production value into the intro. Like they hired real musicians and like real singers, and it was like it's a whole production. It's very impressive theme song. Did you guys watch Gummy Bears, or was I alone on that one? I know it wasn't like a super big or popular cartoon.
No, I watched some of it. I just have trouble remembering anything that specifically happened on it.
Well, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they had a superpower. When they drank a potion, they became very bouncy, which seems like kind of a crappy superpower, but they made it work.
It works for me. I get kind of bouncy. I drink too much.
Well, that's very true. The other one that I think is kind of interesting is Lorenzo Music voiced one of the characters on here, and I can't remember which one it was.
Was there a Frank Welker on Care Bears?
I think there was. Frank Welker was on the Berenstain Bears, and I don't see him on Care Bears. Give me just a second here. It is Tummy Gummy. That's tough to say. Because it's Zumi Gummy, Gruffy Gummy, Grammy Gummy, Tummy Gummy, Sunny Gummy. I can't say this anymore. Cubby Gummy, Augustus Gummy, Gummy Gummy, and then Sir Thornberry.
When did you become a rapper?
I know, it's like the worst rap in the world. But so Tummy Gummy was voiced by Lorenzo Music, who very famously voiced Garfield, which, you know, Garfield was, you know, pretty big cartoon. I think we all watched Garfield, I think, probably at one time or another.
Yeah. I read a lot of Garfield books too.
Yeah, I think I read more as well. But I definitely watched.
You know, that makes me wonder, where do you guys, I know it's a little bit of a diversion, but there's cartoons like Saturday morning cartoons and there's comics. Where do you guys place, like, do you have like a top 5 Sunday daily comic strip comics?
For me, I couldn't separate it. I couldn't separate which one was which, to be honest, at least during that period anyway. Because like if the comic books I was reading at the time would have been like X-Men and Batman, because I was late 80s equivalent of a basic bitch. So I wanted to read about Batman and Wolverine.
Were you specifically talking about comic strips in the newspaper?
Yeah. Like Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah, for sure. I would have like a top 5, like stuff that I had Calvin and Hobbes.
Well, their launch date was 1985, which is kind of why I thought of it. But
yeah, it was kind of a golden age. I liked Bloom County a lot at the time.
Yeah, that was always kind of weird, but yeah.
Like that's something that I liked less as time has gone on. But Far Side never gets old.
Far Side was good. Doonesbury grew on me.
Did you read Foxtrot? Or was that in the 90s? That might not have been 80s.
Yeah, that was in 80s though. But yeah.
I mean, for me, it was like Garfield. And then when I got in the 90s, I started reading Dilbert. And then Scott Adams went insane.
Read a ton of Dilbert,
yeah.
Scott Adams is a lunatic. I'll just say that. He's a lunatic. Anyway.
What about you, Kale? Comic strips?
Comic strips? Yeah, I mean, I liked Garfield. I actually had a Garfield calendar. Like, I didn't really get into Doonesbury. You know, Family Circus, Dennis the Menace, all the classics.
Oh yeah, I read Dennis the Menace.
Then there was a big controversy when the Family Circus mom got her hair cut short for some reason. It was like the tan suit of the 90s.
My favorite part of Family Circus was when they'd always show the little footprints going all around.
Yeah, there's like the map kind of thing.
Yeah.
Crazy trail that they would make.
I got honestly, I was irritated with the Des Moines Register. I felt like the sucky cartoons got put on the first page. I'm like, why is the Family Circle taking up the top half of the front page of the funnies every Sunday?
Yeah, the Family Circus was never really very. I think it was supposed to be meant for parents. I think it's like as a kid you'd read it and you'd just be like, I don't get it.
I would call it Christian values.
I guess maybe that's why I find it funny.
So my kids, I know it's not 1980s, but my kids were big fans of Pearls Before Swine, and I did not read very much of that.
I do vaguely remember that one. For me, the clear favorite was definitely Calvin and Hobbes. I had all their books, I think, and
the one thing. So again, this is diversion, and I'll keep it brief. But I don't know, Jim. You know more about, like, I know a lot about the sort of narrow range of comics that I like a lot. And as far as the greater comics universe, I feel like sometimes, especially DC, I'm definitely have got my areas where I have very little knowledge. The ones I always had a hard time with is I'd see like the Superman strip, and I would never understand, like, how are you supposed to, like, if I miss one day, am I supposed to go find yesterday's paper? Because I'd like read the strip and it'd be like 3 panels and I'd be like, oh, this sounds interesting. I wonder what's going to happen. But then I'd forget about it. And you come back 3 days later and that's gone. They're on to something totally different.
Yeah, I found those impossible to follow because my family only got the Sunday paper. So yeah, you were lost.
I suppose you could they probably got them collected in book form at some place or another. Some of those things.
Yeah,
I remember a series like that. It was Dex something or something Dex.
Rex Morgan.
Rex Morgan. Yeah, it was like trying to read a novel 1 week at a time, and you're missing most of the story.
And that was supposed to be like a serious thing, right? Wasn't he like a lawyer or something? And he was like
detective,
very hard, like very square jaw and very firm with the ladies.
Kind of a spin-off of Dick Tracy, maybe. It's in that same genre. It's like noirish.
Yeah. It's like a noir detective fiction thing.
Which I like noir. I really do, but I mean, it's just hard to follow in a comic book or comic strip form.
So I think it's probably time that we talked about a very little known cartoon show supporting the military called G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained special mission force. Its purpose, to defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
I hear they are, in fact, the real American hero. I was a huge fan of the show. I had to have watched every episode of this. Brandon, you said you weren't. This was on the disallowed list. Is that right?
Yeah. This was. I mean, I got to at least watch a little bit of Smurfs before that got banned, but I never was allowed to watch G.I. Joe. I couldn't watch a cartoon about war. Which, we're going to eventually talk about the Thundercats, which honestly, I think if they ever saw mumm-ra, that would have been on the permaban list, but it never happened. So
I was going to say, like, the things that you've talked about, I'm like, how did some of the other things make the cut? But G.I. Joe didn't? What?
I mean, he's sitting there going, ancient spirits of evil. That would have just gone, but.
So, like we talked about on, I think, Care Bears, G.I. Joe technically had their first special starting off in 1983. They had a little miniseries in 83 and a miniseries in 84, but 85 is where the actual show gets kicked off. I don't know. The thing I loved about the show is, while it is a deeply flawed show in many, many ways, like all these shows are flawed. I mean, none of these shows are perfect, and they weren't written for an adult audience. They're written for a child's audience. But I feel like a lot of these shows, some of the shows were very sort of look down on their audience to some degree or another. And I think as a kid, when you can spot that, shows that think that you're not smart. And shows like G.I. Joe and Transformers before, and other shows like this, where they would build up like this huge backlog of characters and this huge world where, you know, different people had different relationships. And of course you're a kid, so you know exactly how everybody's related. And you know, Zartan's related to, who is Zartan's sister? And, or like, God, now I'm forgetting. I would have known these at the time. I don't know him now, but like Zartan, he had like a whole family of people that could shapeshift or like change their shape or whatever, their faces or whatever. And then you had like
minions.
Yeah, he had his minis, and then there was like Sergeant Slaughter had his crew, and like they were like on their own, and like
Snake Eyes was always considered the coolest as far as I knew.
Yeah, Snake Eyes was cool, and then Storm Shadow was like his, you know, his nemesis, and I don't know, it was just a really cool, and I thought it like you watched the show and you couldn't wait to see like what person was going to be on this week versus like, okay, are we going to get, you know, is Storm Shadow going to come in, or are we going to have to, you know, just have, you know, Duke? Duke's boring.
So I have a question about special characters. Was the Fridge actually ever on the show, or was he just an action figure?
That's right, it's William the Refrigerator Perry.
The Fridge is joined G.I. Joe. And you can get a free fridge. Here's how.
I think, wasn't he part of Sergeant Slaughter's crew?
Maybe. I just don't remember him specifically on the show. Also, I was never a big Sergeant Slaughter fan. I thought he kind of ruined that season for me.
Did he start off on the show, or did he start off in the movie?
He started off in wrestling.
Well, yeah, I know. And this is where our brains, this is just a alert for everyone watching this. None of our brains actually function properly. So just know that as we get into this. I don't know.
Also, if Sergeant Slaughter was on the show, why was the Iron Sheik not on the show?
Oh, he should have. By the way, just if you want a really good time, just follow the Iron Sheik on Twitter. Because first of all, the Iron Sheik has done every drug known to man at least 3 times, and he's also a lunatic. So like, just listen. Don't believe anything he says, or don't really like get into it too much. But it's certainly entertaining. And he really hates Hulk Hogan. So every time Hulk Hogan is trending, he'll be like, "Fuck Hulk Hogan." So yeah.
Is the G.I. Joe property, like the movie, was that made by? Ultimately, was it Walt Disney? Like, could they do a Marvel Disney crossover?
No, I don't think. I don't know who owns G.I. Joe, to be honest. It's well, I can find out.
It's a Hasbro property. I think it's originally a toy line.
Because to me, Black Widow would fit perfectly in some sort of G.I. Joe backstory.
Well, the actual G.I. Joe toys were clear back in the 50s, weren't they? And like,
yeah,
like 12-inch dolls or whatever they were.
Yep. And then, so a lot of the plot for the G.I. Joe, I shouldn't say plot, but the character development, a lot of that was done in the Marvel Comics.
Big shout out to Larry Hama.
Right. And we were kind of talking about this before the podcast. If I remember correctly, a lot of the character development that went into these characters were characters that were originally developed for S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Marvel Universe. And when Marvel bought the rights to G.I. Joe, they kind of said, well, why don't we just use these as the G.I. Joes? Because they had to make some sort of characters. And I had heard something similar about M.a.s.k, which we're going to talk about later too.
Again, it seems like Cap could have worked in pretty good with who was the main blonde good guy on Team Joe,
right? No.
Well, I can shed a little bit of light on this because we live in a world where everything is owned by 4 companies. Guess who bought Hasbro in 2014?
Duke, by the way, it's
Duke.
Duke's boring. Come on.
I know.
Watch a freaking whole episode of a General Hawk. That's interesting. Ooh. Like, tell me you want an episode with Duke more than you want about Flint. Flint's way cooler.
Well,
I like the scuba diver. He had kind of his own special episode where he like got abandoned or something and had to go all.
Wasn't there a guy called
Crazy Commando?
Roadblock?
Yeah, Roadblock, and
Roadblock was awesome.
The name of one of the Transformers, right?
I
Maybe.
don't remember. That's a Brandon question. He knows Transformers better.
I
So
don't remember a Roadblock Transformer.
I don't either.
So, can you guys tell me about the movie? I don't remember the movie. I guess I thought that the mini series sometimes got played condensed, and I thought that was the movie.
Well, no, I think that's what happened. I think that it didn't do particularly well at the box office. In fact, so G.I. Joe did bad enough at the box office that there was supposed to be a Gem movie. We'll talk about Gem a little bit later on. And that movie was scrapped because of the fact that the G.I. Joe movie didn't do very well. And I think the G.I. Joe movie ended up sort of being split up and played on television as well. But it was originally released as a theatrical release. And that's the one where there's the old Cobra comes back. And I think they had Orson, the guy that did the Penguin in the original Batman.
Oh.
Not Orson. Say again.
The original Penguin from the 60s TV show?
Right.
Oh, yeah, I know you're talking
the
about.
Corner Man in Rocky, for God's sake. We're all movie fans.
Yeah.
How are we not coming up with this? Anyway, he comes in there. So it's basically like there's this old Cobra society that's lived under the sea for a bunch of years. And the only thing I remember is they had like their main guy was Nemesis Enforcer, which I always thought was a really cool name. And he could fly, and he had these big blades on his arms, and they could like rip metal doors open and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. And they almost killed Duke.
The ship that brought the Decepticons to the planet was called the Nemesis.
There you go. And they almost killed Duke in the movie. Like they stabbed Duke in the heart with a snake. Long story. And he got better.
Like in that Conan movie?
Sort of. But
I feel like snakes aren't especially pointy. Like you just be like.
Well, I think it was didn't Serpentor do it? I think Serpentor did it. Who was just like a ridiculously over the top guy. Anyway, yeah. So that was that one, and that's the one where Dusty, was like the Raphael, which we'll talk about in a week or two. Dusty was like sort of the angsty like little brother of like I think Flint or somebody. And so, because he did something and got in trouble, and so they sent him off to go be with Sergeant Slaughter in his weird little vehicle to like toughen him up. Was
Destro like Starscream, like second in charge or something?
It's sort of weird though, because Destro's
he was way better than Starscream, because Starscream was whiny and Destro was never whiny.
That's the thing. What's funny is Starscream is imagine Transformers, except Starscream is one in charge. And that's
exactly that's where I was going to go.
Yeah, Destro is more like Megatron.
Absolutely, but he wasn't in charge.
Except only his face is metal.
They put the bumbling boob in charge.
Yeah, Cobra Commander is not a good commander. He is not a good like. I feel like if Destro was in charge, they probably would have beaten G.I. Joe, because G.I. Joe's not that great. Like they're not a great special ops organization. They lose all the time.
But they're scrappy.
They're scrappy. But yeah, like anytime Cobra's going after some MacGuffin thing, like G.I. Joe never prevents them the first time. Like they always get it the first time. And then, Cobra Commander's like, what's this? Blah. And then they all get captured because he's an idiot.
That's exactly what he sounds like too.
And then he blames Destro. Yeah, no, I really like G.I. Joe a lot. It was a blast. And you talk about the guy with the scuba gear. I don't remember who that was, but getting his own story. But like they all got their own stories. Like there was always these like episodes where like one character would be featured and they would get their own little thing. It was very it was kind of soap opera-ish in a way.
Well, I remember there was like a sailor and
Shipwreck.
There was like the pilot of the big helicopter.
Yep.
Maybe this is a subject for a different episode, but there's an archetype that I think most fully gets explored in cartoons. Maybe Destro is one of the ones, but it's the second in charge who is really the calm brains behind the guy. There's one in that Gargoyles that had most of the TNG people doing voice acting. The guy behind the bad guy who is kind of like this calm, efficient force that kind of got everything done.
Well, in Transformers, that'd be like Soundwave.
Yeah.
Shockwave. Sorry.
Well, it'd be Soundwave on Earth.
Yeah, but Shockwave is. I feel like Shockwave is like the most important person.
But well, I mean, we don't even see him for most of the time. He's on the other planet. He's still.
Well, I know that's why he's smart. He's not getting in fights with people. He's just ruling the roost.
Anonymity.
I like that archetype though. I always thought that was really neat.
By the way, Frank Welker played Torch and probably a bunch of other characters. It doesn't really say.
Did Torch have a flamethrower?
How did you know? I don't know. I liked all of them. I loved Roadblock. I liked they had Lady J, Scarlet, and CoverGirl. Because like they would, I don't know. I just thought it was a real fun show, and the way it's done is just a way most cartoons aren't done. I feel like most cartoons, you've got 5 characters and they fight the other main 5 characters, and they'll introduce like one random guest character every episode that will have a MacGuffin. And G.I. Joe would have different characters that would interact with the MacGuffin every episode. So I thought that was interesting.
And they had laser rifles.
And they had laser rifles that would never hit anybody. And I was watching a thing about that. Apparently that was like basically something that was said right from the beginning, like, we're going to do war, but nobody's ever going to die. Like, we're never going to show anybody die. And it was a very intentional thing they did.
Like, so I think this is really, I remember at the time thinking, this is bizarre, because this is not Saturday morning cartoons. This is afternoon cartoons, right? Mm. And you've got G.I. Joe and Transformers, Thundercats are kind of the big afternoon cartoons. In G.I. Joe, no one ever gets shot. If a Cobra tank gets destroyed, the guy in the tank comes out with a parachute. Like, no one even gets a scratch.
Sometimes they jump out. Sometimes they jump out.
It's the A-Team.
In Transformers, the main characters like lose their arms, lose their legs, actually die. But it's okay because they're robots.
Okay to destroy a machine.
It's sort of there's kind of an interesting argument about that as to whether or not it's a good thing or not. Like, do you want to say, hey, we're not going to show kids people getting killed, and we're going to make it very obvious that nobody got killed, you know, to kind of make that a safer place. But then again, also you wonder how many people grew up sort of with a more, well, let's just say less healthy view on what war is like. That, oh, war is just like, war is M.a.s.k. and G.I. Joe.
Like,
don't get me wrong, I love the show M.a.s.k. But it's not, you know, it's not real.
The cartoons that I saw growing up showed people dying when they got shot. Maybe when I was a teenager, I wouldn't want to have BB gun wars.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea. I don't know. What do you guys think they should have shown people die? Should have not shown people die, or left it ambiguous?
I thought it was great entertainment. If you're asking me morally, it's probably just not a good idea to show kids war cartoons.
Yeah,
I would leave it.
I mean, maybe don't have war cartoons altogether is the real answer.
Like, if somebody gets shot, then you just don't see them on the screen anymore.
Fair enough. I don't know. Does anybody have any other thoughts on? I don't want to talk about just G.I. Joe, even though I could kind of.
We didn't even talk about the toys. The toys.
Yeah.
But before we get to the toys, I have one last point about the cartoon, and I love this innovation: the red lasers, blue lasers. You could always tell who was who in the battle because one side had blue lasers and the other side had red lasers.
It's very true.
Fantastic.
As far as the toys go, I've said on a previous episode that we went to, like, you know, we didn't have a ton of money growing up. So, you know, we would go to garage sales. So I would get tons of the G.I. Joe toys, but none of them were new. So nothing was like the way it should be. So like I had a ton of toys. I had a ton of G.I. Joe toys, but they were all like with at least 4 parts missing sometimes. And sometimes all the parts missing. Like I had the hovercraft.
Like Sid from Toy Story got to him.
Yeah. Well, not just like it probably would have been owned by 3 kids before me. You know, like the hovercraft was the greatest, you know, vehicle, which in reality, the hovercraft is not the greatest vehicle. The hovercraft is a stupid vehicle. But at that age, like I thought it was great. And except it had nothing, it had none of the parts. It was literally just the hovercraft. Like the doors were taken off of it. There was like nothing attached to it. And I remember that everybody wanted the aircraft carrier, even though it was ridiculous. And like, how would you even play with a toy that big?
You can't.
Yeah. My favorite one was this one. I had this one, and that was awesome because it's the thing that has two giant missiles that have missiles on them. Because I mean, if you're gonna have a giant missile, you definitely have some room for some other missiles that can shoot off of that and shoot other missiles that maybe also have missiles.
All right,
This goes.
Go ahead, Cam.
Sorry. No, you go ahead.
So I have a few things to say about the toys. Number one, I really like toys. Big into toys. So I mostly played with GI Joes, but I didn't have any GI Joe vehicles. I felt like the Star Wars vehicles were superior. The GI Joe action figures, hands down, crushed Star Wars and anything else out there.
Oh yeah, the Star Wars action figures were terrible. They had you could move like their arms up and down or their legs back and forth. Like you couldn't move their heads or anything. They were just like, I am Star Wars. Yeah, they sucked.
So GI Joe toys had a really huge innovation. I thought the first generation came out and they had movable elbows, movable knees, but that only gave them a certain amount of posability. The next generation, they had elbows so they could go back and forth with their arms, so they could hold their guns across their body. I thought that was really huge for the playability factor with those toys.
Was it supination and pronation? I can't remember. I used to know the difference.
The other thing that I don't know if anybody else did, but I love this about GI Joe, is they had screws on their backs, so you could take them apart and mix and match the character parts and make new characters.
Like a psychopath.
Exactly. I didn't eat the parts.
And then get them stuck in your throat and then...
Right.
Speaking of toys, I was just... I was just looking at a Destro in the package, and they call him Destro the Enemy, which is kind of nailing it. And he's an enemy weapon supplier, which means that he supply himself or other enemies. And his code name is Destro, which seems like a terrible code name if your real name is Destro. But
it reminds me of when they were introducing Mike Pence. When he was first running with Trump, and he was like, "My name's Mike Pence. In Indiana, they call me Mike." It's like, yeah, no shit.
It'd be weird if they didn't.
Around here,
they call me fuck off.
I don't want to tell you what was. No, so you guys hold on to your hats now, because I got a couple of things to say. First of all, Mike talking about have things that have other things coming out of them reminds me of our earlier days when we would always come up with ridiculous weapons like shotguns that shoot chainsaws that are on fire. But I had the Tomahawk, which was the big
is that the F-14?
Like a Sikorsky style helicopter, like kind of like a predecessor to the Black Hawk.
Oh, okay.
And then I also had the Cobra Ski Boat. I'm not sure if that's what you would call it. It's like a speedboat, and then if you pulled this thing on the back, the hydrofoils would come out underneath it.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
So it was supposed to go on the surface of the water, but I drug it behind my dad's fishing boat. It never really did that.
Of course he did.
And it kind of sank once, but it was tied up, so I pulled it back up. But yeah, the toys were great, and like where the screw was, where Jim was talking about, that's where the little backpack goes, and they always had like little accessories and stuff. They had their little rifle and their knife and their backpack, and like on the helicopter and on the other vehicles they had like other stuff. Like the helicopter had the little hoist, so you could like hoist guys up, because you got to pull them out of a hot LZ or whatever. And
it had a gun.
Yeah, and but they did not have door gunners. I don't know why, but and then like on the boat one, it had a little thing that you could flick, and it would shoot out depth charges, which were just these little gray plastic barrels.
Did you guys know anybody that had the aircraft carrier? I'm just curious, because I never even knew. I never saw the thing in person.
Mark Wittrig probably did.
I doubt it.
He had almost everything.
Because
Yeah,
it sticks in my
this
mind, the
about
aircraft carrier was like $200 in like 1985, which $200 in 1985 was more
That's
money
like
than I could have ever even
$1,000,
imagined when I was like 6 or 7 years old.
for a toy.
Right.
You're right. It was gigantic. It was unmanageable, really. And but the thing about since you bring up Mark, I was going to get to that. Is I remember him having all those G.I. Joe toys, and when we were growing up, he actually lived in the house that I live in now, and I remember being out on this front porch or sitting on the steps, and he would rubber band a bunch of firecrackers to his G.I. Joe characters because he had so many of them, and he would just blow them up. Just like leave them
Disgraceful.
Dude.
He's like, I'm gonna die.
Just, the $200 in 1985 would be like $550 now. So yeah, just imagine a parent going paying $550 for a toy. And yeah, that's not going to happen.
No. So I actually took a trip down memory lane a few years ago. I was clearing out things in my parents' attic, and I ran across a box of Smurf glasses from Hardee's, and they were wrapped in newspaper ads. And when I unwrapped the newspaper ads were fascinating because they were like, I don't know, like Alco, but or dime store ads kind of things. And some of the things were insanely cheap, and other things like VCRs were $200, which, like you said, is a lot of money in the 80s.
Jim, I remember when my dad first got our first VCR for the house, and he used to have the video clubs, because like a lot of places, like you couldn't necessarily just go buy videotapes, like they weren't everywhere. And so he was going to buy a copy of Platoon, and it was $100. It was $100 for a copy of Platoon.
Wow.
And it's like, again, that's $100 in, $1986 or $1987 or whatever. It was crazy.
And now you can get it in a bargain bin of DVDs for like $4.
Yeah, and if you found a VCR, they'd probably pay you to take it, right?
Our first VCR was a top loader, and the remote was on a cable, and it had little dials that for the UHF. That many years later, when I was in the country, I could tune into early cell phone calls and hear one half of the conversation.
By the way, just for reference, it was the USS Flag, was the aircraft carrier, and this seems insane to me. But it says, so it was a retail price of $110. So I was a little off, but $110 again, that's like $300 in today's dollars. 7 feet 6 inches.
I think probably that's a bargain. Honestly, I mean, that's a huge toy. I don't know that you could play very much with it, but that's a lot of plastic.
But I mean, as a kid, somebody bought you a 7-foot toy. That's insane.
So where do you put that?
Yeah, where do you put it? Yeah.
In your freaking second or third bedroom, apparently.
It would have to be in a designated area where you go to play with stuff. Did we have play areas back in the day?
No, it was
the living room or my room,
like TV room, and then everyone complained that I didn't pick up my toys, and then they threw them away. Sad.
But I will
That's
say
like
this.
Everybody from the 1980s story.
I knew a guy that had a Lego Star Destroyer that was probably 4 feet long that he built. So, I mean, yeah, you're either into it or you're not. Jim, you're probably into it. You probably want that thing even now.
I want all the things, partly because I didn't, like, I had plenty, but
Jim, that's the most American thing you've ever said.
Right? It's everyday life in America. You always compare to the people you know, right? So I had plenty, but like my friend had, in my mind, like every Transformer, and I had like 6 or 10.
But I also feel like at that era, everybody thought that everybody else had way more things than they had. Just because, like, that's your kid brain. Like, you go over to somebody else's house, you're like, oh my God, they have everything. And you go home and you're like, I have nothing. Meanwhile, there's like 40 fucking things sitting around your house. And it's like,
I hate my life. My parents don't love me.
They don't get me anything. It's like, you got like 25 things. Shut up.
I kind of go through that now with my son. He's like, "Oh, I got some birthday money. I want to go get this toy," and it's like, but you don't do anything with those toys anymore. You have a Switch that you play games on. You have a tablet that you read on or watch a video on. You don't actually do anything with those toys anymore. It's like, I do sometimes.
It doesn't stop me from buying toys.
It's not the having, it's the getting.
I need to have this. I need it now.
All right, if we're not careful, this entire show is going to be about G.I. Joe, which I'm not entirely against, but there are a couple other big ones we should probably talk about. So the next one that I remember very clearly, and I remember loving, and I'm not sure if you guys do, but it's Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling.
I never even knew that was a thing until you said it first.
You had
really?
Yeah.
Oh my
I
goodness.
watched it a little bit.
So one, just a little piece of trivia about it. So they had the wrestlers were played by the actual wrestlers in like one episode or something, and then other voice actors took over. And Hulk Hogan would come in and do like live action stuff every so often, which apparently IMDb says that if you watch the intro, that apparently there's people walking next to Hulk Hogan that are tripping and falling over and then getting back up. So if I can find that, I'll put that in here. And we'll see if I get a copyright strike. Thanks, YouTube. But the one thing that I thought was most interesting is Captain Lou Albano, which you guys all remember Captain Lou?
Yeah, with the rubber bands in his face.
Right.
I was always fascinated with those.
Or no, excuse me, not Captain Lou. Jimmy Snuka. Jimmy Snuka was played by Louis Arquette, who unfortunately died fairly young in 2001. And you might know his children, Alexis Arquette, Patricia Arquette, David Arquette, and Rosanna Arquette. And he played the cartoon version of Jimmy Superfly Snuka, who in the cartoon didn't kill a guy.
Allegedly.
Captain Lou was in the cartoon, right?
Yeah, he was in the cartoon too, but it was weird. They would have the wrestlers on every so often, but in the cartoon, they were always played by other people.
And the main antagonist was Roddy Piper, right?
Right, it was Roddy Piper. Again, I think Roddy Piper was on like one episode, and then they would just have these other voice actors playing the characters.
Now, was Mr. T on that? Because he had a cartoon show too.
No, Mr. T had his own thing. Now, one interesting thing, Junkyard Dog in the show was played by James Avery, who went on to be on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and for me, most famously as Shredder in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which he had just a perfect voice for Shredder. Just such a good, like, villainous voice for Shredder. He was awesome. And yeah, basically in the cartoon, everybody else was played by somebody else. But it was basically Hulk Hogan and I can't remember, was Andre the Giant. I think Andre the Giant was one of the good guys, and Captain Lou was one of the good guys. And the bad guys were the Iron Sheik, Big John Studd, Mr. Fuji, Nikolai Volkov, and Roddy Piper.
Why was Big John Studd a bad guy?
I think he was a bad guy, wasn't he?
I always thought he was a face, not a heel, but whatever.
Well, I mean, a lot of them changed. Let's see here. Well, here, I'll tell you. Okay, so Hulk Hogan was the leader of the Faces of the Good Guys, consisting of Junkyard Dog, Captain Lou, Andre the Giant, Wendy Richter, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Hillbilly Jim. I can't believe I've read Hillbilly Jim. Tito Santana, Roddy Piper was the leader of the Heels, which included Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov, Fabulous Moolah, Big John Studd, Mr. Fuji, Bobby Heenan, and Mean Gene Okerlund. Oh, that was when he was still mean.
Mean Gene.
Let me tell you something, Mean Gene. I was gonna say.
So I have a couple questions because you guys know a lot more about wrestling than I do.
I wouldn't say a lot.
So, I watched some wrestling in this time period, and I feel like Roddy Piper was a big deal, but I never actually saw him wrestle. When did he stop wrestling?
Well, so Roddy Piper, he was one of the people that was really good at talking, and he wrestled too, and he was a pretty good wrestler, but he was a good talker. He had his own show, which was I can't remember. Brandon, do you remember Roddy Piper's show? Because Jake had the Snake Pit, and Brother Love had the Love something.
Yeah, no, I don't remember the title. I thought you were talking about like another cartoon or something.
No, like his own show on wrestling.
I remember. It looked
I
like
don't remember. Go ahead.
It looked like a bar, and he smashed coconut on Superfly's head.
That would
Lucky
hurt.
Superfly didn't kill him because he killed a guy.
All right. My other question is the cartoon when Hulk started pushing vitamins, or was that pre-cartoon?
I think that's when he took over as the Hulkster, and I don't know when that would have been early 80s, I think, maybe late 70s. That whole persona.
Say your prayers, take your vitamins.
Yep.
It's funny because Hulk Hogan was a terrible wrestler. Like he was never a good wrestler in it. Like he knew like 4 moves. Basically every wrestler knew more than him, but he was just.
But he had gigantic arms.
24-inch pythons, brother.
And he was actually Italian because his last name's Bolia.
Terry Bolia.
Speaking of 24-inch pythons, how big were the Rock's pythons on Sunday? Because
I don't. The Rock didn't look like so. I don't know. We all watched the Super Bowl. This is going to be you're going to be seeing this much after the Super Bowl, but the Rock looked like he looked so buff that he looked almost weird, like not quite human.
Well, his arms look bigger than his waist. I'm like, how is that possible?
Yeah, he looked like he had a very skinny waist and like this huge upper body, like he's just going to tip over or something. Yeah, he's a very, very large person. And he's going to be Black Adam.
Can't wait.
Okay, so I don't really have that much more to say, but I just thought it was fun. It's like I was watching wrestling at the time, and I liked a lot of the rest. I liked Hillbilly Jim was fun, and Junkyard Dog was fun, and Tito Santana was cool, and yeah, and Captain Lou was Captain Lou, and he was in and that's where they had that connection between them and oh god, Time After Time, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Cyndi Lauper. And Cyndi Lauper did a bunch of wrestling because she was good friends with Captain Lou Albano, and like he was in at least one of her music videos, maybe 2. Yeah, it's a weird sort of connection point between Cyndi Lauper, animated cartoons, and wrestling.
Well, honestly, I mean, the cartoon thing kind of makes sense. I mean, because the concept of wrestling is pretty cartoonish.
Well, I mean, intentionally so. Intentionally so. It's supposed to be big in the scene. And if you want to hear us talk more about wrestling, we have a whole episode about that.
And a couple more are going to come up.
They will indeed. Does anybody else have anything to say about Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling? It was rockin' and it was wrestling.
I want to know if Ricky the Dragon was on there.
I do not believe he was. So it's sort of bad to say, but it's sort of true. There was people that sort of fell inside the kind of archetypes. And both Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Tito Santana would have been your intercontinental champions. So that would be guys that are like not as big as Hulk Hogan, but usually a little bit more like agile and whatever. And like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Tito Santana would have kind of been a similar character, or is kind of in a similar position. That's probably why they wouldn't have put them both on there. Huh?
Or Ravishing Rick Rude. He was an intercontinental guy.
Yeah, but he would have been on the heel side. And Ravishing Rick Rude, by the way, one of the best heels. He was such a good heel. Like he could have an entire audience furious at him, and he was so good at it. I was just go back and watch some of Ravishing Rick Rude's like promos he would do. Like he would just insult the audience. I remember one of the times he'd be like, "Let me show you Pennsylvania piss ants what a real man looks like." Yeah, he was good. Anyway, so this is one I know nothing about, but I think that you guys have watched this more than I did. I think Brandon, you've watched this, and that is the Punky Brewster.
Punky Brewster, together with the best of friends. Punky Brewster, I always want you here with me. I know.
Yeah, it was one of those ones that me and my sister both got to watch. Like there was a TV show, like a live action TV show that came first that I don't really remember.
She's a maniac on the floor. And she's dancing like she's never danced before.
Who are you?
I'm Punky Brewster.
And
But
this is this is a spinoff
Wasn't that
of that.
Alyssa Milano?
I don't know if it's a spinoff or if it's just the cartoon version with the slightly, because they had a.
It's
what was the
listed as a
thing? It was like
spinoff.
a. Oh, okay.
It's listed.
What was the thing? A leprechaun or something like, or a little bear or something? Gomer, the
Bloomer, voiced by
I don't know.
Frank Welker.
I don't know. But it talks like this.
Yeah, that's it. No, it was a good show. It had. Speaking of theme songs, I thought that was pretty good too. I don't remember. You know, it was a long time ago, and it went off fairly early. But it was one of those few ones that both Court and I could agree on watching.
Which that probably wasn't a huge number of shows.
No, there wasn't a lot of them. No.
Was that Frank Welker too?
Yeah, like I said, he did the Glomer or whatever.
Who Meat What sounds like Glummer, by the way.
Also Salil Moon Fry. Am I saying that right? Yeah, Salil Moon Fry did a documentary about sort of with a bunch of the other people, kids that grew up in that same era. Kid 90? Yeah, Kid 90. It's sort of just about a lot of the other kids that grew up in that same era. So if you're kind of a fan of this type of stuff, it's got her and David Arquette and Adam Carolla, Andrew Dorff. I don't. It's got tons and tons of people from that era. Corey Feldman.
The Man Show fame.
Hi.
Adam Carolla of The Man Show fame.
Oh, that guy's such a. Yeah, well, I don't want to talk about him.
The thing
I've wondered in the past, is Gomer some sort of like answer to Alf, like some sort of like let's get an Alf type character?
Well,
could be. He's a leprechaun gopher.
The only thing that I was going to say about that was that in the live action show was about her, Punky, the character, dealing with, problems in her life and getting through it somehow, working through it somehow. Whereas in the cartoon series, Glomer would just wiggle his ears and cast magic and just fix everything for her.
I don't know. I thought she was fairly independent in the cartoon too.
I know. I think I watched maybe a couple episodes of that one. And I think I remember the cartoon. I don't think I remember the original series, the live action series very well.
Yeah. I can't even really picture that, but I can still kind of picture the cartoon and remember really liking the intro to it.
Jim, do you have any thoughts on Punkies or Brewsters?
I vaguely remember the live action TV show and do not remember the cartoon at all.
Fair enough. So next on the list is one that I watched a little bit. I just think it's interesting. And actually, my wife kind of got into the comic book resurgence this one. That is the TV series Gem. She's totally amazing or whatever. I can't remember the, by the way, good theme song. I just can't remember right off the top of my head or the lyrics. And it's very, very 80s. I mean, it's like glam rock, she's like a regular girl who can transform into Gem, who's like, star and like, great music and all this other stuff. But very much sort of tapped into the music of the era.
Wasn't there
I don't get
X-Men character that was like that?
Yes, that's a whole thing. That's Jim, help me out. The one Dazzler. And Dazzler, there was a whole thing. She was actually introduced, I think, in the 1970s to be tied in as like a whole disco thing that never really kind of got off the ground.
Wait until Disney gets a hold of her.
Yeah, no shit.
So Gem was a regular girl that turned into a rock star. She had like an alternate personality.
Yeah, Jerrica Benton.
So she was basically Hannah Montana before Hannah Montana.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know anything about Hannah Montana, but I'll take your word for it.
Things didn't turn
out. She's still around. So I just think it's interesting. It's very like kind of music and I don't know. He's obviously very female centric. I did think it was interesting that the band that they're against is the Misfits, and I always wondered how that worked.
I want to root for the villains.
Did Danzig know about this?
Well, I'm saying that because like one of my favorite punk bands is the Misfits, and most of the Misfits song would not go over very well on children's cartoon shows.
Your skull.
Better than being against war, I guess.
I would say the one about taking people's skulls is maybe on the lesser end of the spectrum of offensive when it comes to them. But yeah, it was fun. I don't know. Did you guys watch it? I don't know. Kale, did your sister watch?
I think I vaguely know what you're talking about, but no, I never saw it. And I don't think Court watched it either. But I think since then, God, it sounds vaguely familiar, but I could be confusing it with that X-Men with Dazzler.
Did you say
remember
Dazzler?
Dazzler.
Much different character. Much different character.
I put a heart on my butt.
That's enough out of you, Brandon.
Bragging about that.
It was fun, and they did a sort of a resurgence of it in the comic books maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and my wife really got into it. It had really neat art. I think it was IDW. Jim, does that sound right?
Yeah,
I think it was IDW.
I don't know for sure, but that sounds right.
But it was good. It's good, really cool art. And yeah, it's an interesting property. It's just like kind of the connection between music and kids and cartoons in the 80s, and it definitely filled that hole very, very well. And like I said, again, it's my understanding that the failure at the box office of the G.I. Joe cartoon movie is what led to the cancellation of the Gem cartoon movie. So, and then they did a movie. They did a live action Gem movie. I think about in 2015. And it was basically nothing to do with the cartoon property.
I would have never guessed that coming here would mean a whole new Jerica.
You mean Gem. The whole world wants to know who you are right now. An icon is not one of four, it's one of a kind.
Which one's the real you?
And they kind of just use the names to make it, to take the property and make something sort of vaguely like it.
It says here that it was fairly highly rated, but it was called Gem and the Holograms.
Well, that's the name of the band. The band is Gem and the Holograms. I remember when it came out that it was not thought of very well. And it was just kind of a vehicle to, sell some CDs.
Do they have toys that went with it too, or just music?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rotten Tomatoes says it as a 22%. So, and the audience score isn't much better at 40%.
The IMDb's got it at 7.4.
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, this is sort of outside the range, the range of this discussion. I hate the IMDb ratings because I always feel like I can't remember what the best movie on. I think it's like Batman, Dark Knight or something like that is like the best movie. The best rated movie on IMDb, and it's like that's not the best movie ever made. It's just not. I don't know. IMDb ratings are weird. I think the good metric for me is if you look at a movie on Rotten Tomatoes and it's rated badly by both critics and the audience, then that's a pretty good sign that it's not a very good movie.
So you didn't like that thing that I tagged you in earlier about the top 8?
Well, no, that's not. I think that was talking about critics. And there are some movies which are critically panned, but I think are very good. Like for example, well, it's kind of outside the realm of the discussion, but I'm saying if it's rated badly, both by critics and audiences, then that's probably a sign it's not that great.
My question was about the Gem movie, because you said that the G.I. Joe movie didn't do so well. Now, Transformers was also a Hasbro product, right?
Yeah, yes. I think Transformers came earlier, though, didn't it?
Before?
I think Transformers came earlier, but I'll check that out.
The movie or the cartoon?
The movie.
I don't know.
Because if it went like, okay, the Transformers movie was okay, and then the G.I. Joe movie kind of bombed, that would probably, I mean, I would understand why they'd be like, okay, maybe we don't want to do this movie after all.
Okay, the Transformers movie was 1986. Yeah, so G.I. Joe, the movie, came out in 87. So it would have come out a year after Transformers then. And I don't want to get into all the box office. I don't know if it listed here. But yeah, it's my understanding that I don't think Transformers did particularly well at the box office either. Because that's one thing that we sort of have a tendency to believe the movies we like did well at the box office. But a lot of the movies we like did not do well at the box office at all. I mean, again, we'll be talking more about Denis Villeneuve when we do the sequel to Dune next year. But like Blade Runner 2049 was a huge box office bomb. Hell, the original Blade Runner was a box office bomb. It didn't make a dime. I think people just didn't get it. You know, it's a problem sometimes. But
that was my impression of the Transformers movie, that it was not a success, but it seems like it's kind of held up over time. I did not really care for it at the time, but I've heard quite a few positive things about its impact and its influence.
I think it's held up as far as I still find it entertaining, and the next generation does. My son enjoyed it too. Which, I mean, there's a lot of 80s stuff you couldn't show a kid nowadays. He'd be just kind of bored by it, but he loved the cartoon movie.
All right, so next is sort of the confusing one. So this is M.a.s.k. I never knew anything about M.a.s.k, and there are other people that I talked to that absolutely loved M.a.s.k and thought it was just, you know, the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's one that I think was picked up by Marvel Comics for quite a while. And it's one of those weird things about Marvel Comics. There's a whole bunch of things that were included like in canon as Marvel, like you know, G.I. Joe, M.a.s.k, Transformers, other things that were in canon sort of connected to the Marvel universe. And then when they lost the rights to the properties, they were just like, that's not connected anymore.
The Micronauts, ROM.
Those are two that I have no idea who they are, and I know they're super popular. Never.
You need to go back and read some Micronauts. This is some of my favorite stuff, man.
I will absolutely tell you I'll do that. What can you tell us about M.a.s.k, Jim? Do you have experience with them?
I do not remember watching the TV show. I remember the toys. I thought the toys were really cool, kind of like a cross between G.I. Joe and Transformers. The action figures were very small, and all the characters came with a helmet, which was their mask. And I think the helmet gave them some sort of special capability. But the real focus of the show was their vehicles. Each person had their own vehicle, and their vehicle transformed into some other sort of weaponized vehicle. So like somebody would have a car that would pop open and have gigantic machine guns on it. The motorcycle turned into a helicopter. Seems like maybe somebody had one of the villains had a helicopter that turned into a fighter jet, something like that. But the toys are really pretty inventive.
It looks like you got 2 seasons and 75 episodes. And for those wondering, it stands for Mobile Armored Strike Command, a special task force led by Matt Tracker, but spelled with 2 Ks. I don't approve of that. Who operate transforming armored vehicles in their ongoing battle against the criminal organization, Venom. Which is the vicious evil network of mayhem. Who joins that?
Who named that?
It's like Magneto is in charge of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Like if you're a mutant, you're just like, you know, I'm feeling kind of evil.
Where do I sign up for the evil, negative,
vicious evil network of mayhem? I feel like they didn't spend as much time on that acronym as they could have. Like, I feel like another 6 hours of spitballing that could have come up with something a little more believable, but it's fine. And Venom's primary goal was obtaining money. They're obtaining money. That's all they're doing. I feel like that's like Cobra's trying to conquer the world. And these guys are like, let's get money.
Venom was secretly.
Well, then
they were behind the takeover of Nakatomi Towers.
I guess.
All they wanted was money. They should have joined some giant corporation.
And apparently, by the way, it's a French produced. This French animated series produced by DIC Enterprises.
So French people hate money?
They certainly hate soap. Got him. Take that, France. I don't have anything else to say about M.a.s.k. I know it was popular. It was in Marvel Comics, and it was part of the universe until it wasn't. And now it's probably owned by Disney because everything is. Apparently, they were licensed to Paramount for a while, and there were apparently this idea that they were creating a movie universe combining Micronauts, G.I. Joe, Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light, M.a.s.k. and ROM.
Seriously, who was high when they came up with that? That just made my head explode.
Well, that's like 2015. So I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Seriously, most of those things don't have anything to do with one another.
Well, neither the Transformers and garbage.
So apparently it was announced as recently as February of 2020 that Chris Bremer was going to write a script for M.a.s.k. I don't know what it doesn't say whether it's a television show or a movie or a nothing like it probably will be.
Should make it a video game. Give it to Hideo Kojima and let him do something weird with it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to do something with it. It's not entirely clear who owns it. It seems like they had some kind of a deal that Paramount had to do with Hasbro, but it seems like Hasbro has been bought by Disney in the interim, so I don't really know where this stuff is.
Oh no, they should make it part of the Mad Max world.
The next Kingdom Hearts game is going to be pretty interesting.
They're going to be like, great, we can put everything in there because we now own all the intellectual property.
Kids are going to be like, what are Micronauts?
Why should I care?
Okay, the next two, I don't have a lot to say about, but I thought we should at least mention them. One of them is Robotech. Robotech was really big. It was a Japanese series, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's robots and they have tech. And that's about all I know about it. Brandon? Kale? Good cue. Good timing. Jim,
so like
do you know anything about Robotech?
Like usual, I know more about the toys than I do about the cartoon. I did not watch the cartoon. I don't even know what it was on, honestly.
I don't know.
It was even available at this time where we lived.
Must have been on.
No, it was first released in the United States in 1985. Harmony Gold USA in association with Tatsunoko Production.
But would it have been on cable, maybe? It was not a Saturday morning cartoon. No way.
I feel like I saw it somewhere. I don't know where, though.
So I will tell you my entry into Robotech was models. Robotech had fantastic models.
Oh, yeah.
So they had kind of Gundam style models where they came with rubber joints. So when you built them, they could move. It was pretty cool stuff. Seems like the villains in Robotech were giants, aliens.
Almost certainly.
That's about all I know about it. The toys were kind of cool. I didn't really own any of the toys. The models were awesome. And this was a period where I was really into doing models.
When you say that they're models, are they like Gundam?
Yeah. So, but they were like Gundams wasn't like, if you told me in 1985, do you do Gundam models? I'd be like, I don't know what a Gundam is. But yeah, they were essentially Gundam models.
I think it is kind of interesting. Like there's a game that I always wanted to play called Mech Warrior, which was really big at the time for PC. But that was that era of PC gaming where you had to have the top of the line computer to play anything, because like if you didn't have a top of the line computer, your computer wouldn't play any games. And I remember trying to play Mech Warrior on my dad's like HP Pavilion, with 5 megabytes of RAM or something. And it was so cool because like you had all these like weapons you could choose between, and you had to like choose like your shield and all this other stuff. And invariably, like I would start it up and then it would just crash like 5 seconds into playing it, and it was just like it was very disappointing to a child.
Is that the one that Tyler had that giant controller for?
Well, this was a PC, so there probably were controllers for it. The one I just used the keyboard though.
Well, this thing, I mean, it looked like mech controls. Like it had like a section here and a section off to the side. There's a couple of sticks and a bunch of buttons.
Well, that was a whole big thing in the 80s. That the whole idea of the mech robots. I mean, I guess Gundam is probably where a lot of that stuff starts. I mean, is Gundam like the earliest iteration of that? Do you think?
Probably.
I don't know. Evangelion's probably.
How far does that go back? 70s?
Hard to say. No, actually, I was looking this up the other day when we were talking about Voltron, and there's a lot of early Japanese mech that goes before that, like down to like 74 or so.
Okay. Well, I remember watching when Full Moon was still getting actual money for making movies. They made Robot Jocks and Robot Wars, and they were like movies about big mechs that they were trying to make for, $35,000 or something.
And here in the West, they didn't really get any kind of light shone on them until Pacific Rim.
Yeah, Evangelion wasn't even until 95. So.
Yeah, I wish we knew more about mechs and robotechs, but unfortunately we do not. But it's interesting and it's really cool. And yeah, the models, like I know for the con we do, there's a bunch of people that are really into that stuff, and they do like it's really intricate models and stuff. It's something that I could never have the hand coordination to ever do.
And a really fun video game, if you're into video games, Titanfall. That's a really fun game.
Fair enough. The next one is one I feel like we kind of already talked about to some degree, because it's She-Ra, Princess of Power.
I am Adora, He-Man's twin sister.
Which is a spinoff of He-Man. I know that I watched it at least a little bit, but I don't remember anything about it because I think I was a little bit too young to be into the original He-Man too much, because most of that stuff was already in syndication by the time I was old enough to be watching it. So I think I caught She-Ra a little bit. Did you guys watch it?
I didn't see the 80s one. I didn't watch most of the He-Man universe in the 80s. But I did watch the 2 remakes on Netflix now, and both of those are really good.
Kale, She-Ra.
It might be froze.
Jim, did you watch She-Ra when it was on?
No, I did not watch She-Ra. I'm opposed to She-Ra. And I absolutely agree with some analysis that I heard once that She-Ra was the death of He-Man, because they're promoted in the same universe, and all the little boys whose little sisters got She-Ras decided that He-Man was lame. Your sisters had She-Ra. He-Man was no longer cool. It was over for He-Man. But
oh no, this sounds like Kevin Sorbo complaining about Xena the Warrior Princess.
that is rude.
I don't know. Just briefly, that really bugs. Like Kevin Sorbo, I guess, is always like, I feel like that's always like just bubbling under the surface, that he feels like Hercules should have been like the bigger show, when everybody knows Xena was huge. Like it developed a huge audience, and Hercules was just Hercules. I don't feel like anybody cared that much about it.
Right. Because Kevin Sorbo is not very good.
Yeah. There There's a thing Cam and I just saw recently where he was complaining that he has 20 projects on his desk that are, have crews lined up and he just can't get funding. And it's like, have you tried not being a part of them? Maybe you should do that.
I mean, he's in all the God's Not Dead movies.
No, just the first one.
Just the first one. That's right. Yeah. Because he dies.
Because he's an atheist. Because if you're an atheist, you should die. Which is a great message.
Yeah, really is.
The next one, again, I kind of breezed past a little bit because we've kind of talked about the DC superheroes a fair amount here, but it's a superpowers team. That for some reason is a little unwieldy. Superpowers team, Galactic Guardians. I feel like they had too many buzzwords in that title.
Well, is this different than the previous DC? Because I feel like they just renamed the title of the series.
Are we positive it's even DC?
They say this is also known. They say this is also known as Super Friends 8.
Right.
So the characters you have Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Robin, Cyborg. Cyborg would have been new. I didn't even know Cyborg went back that far. I guess. What does Cyborg go back to? Was he one of the creations of the guy that took over Teen Titans?
He was one of the when they did the new Teen Titans in 1980, 1982. He was one of the new characters.
Right.
Cyborg, Starfire, and Raven were all added in the early 80s to the Teen Titans.
Is that George Perez?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so. Great guy, and apparently not doing very well physically.
Yeah,
unfortunately. So Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Robin, Cyborg, Aquaman, Firestorm, Hawkman, Green Lantern, The Flash, Samurai, and El Dorado.
And were they versus Darkseid still?
Let's see here. New Gods of Apocalypse villains: Darkseid, Desaad, Calabac, Parademons, Boom Tubes, Apocalypse, New Genesis. Also Lex Luthor, the Joker, the Royal Flush Gang. Not familiar with them.
I think they were on the Batman cartoon.
They were.
Oh, were they?
They wore black and white costumes, usually.
And, basically kind of all the usual suspects.
Yeah, so I feel like the DC stuff they've renamed each season, but like for 3 or 4 seasons, it was basically the Super Friends versus Darkseid.
Yeah, this one, and they basically have listed as, they only have listed as 8 episodes. Maybe you're right. Maybe they were just renaming it every episode. I don't know. Do you have anything new you want to say about this one in particular? I was not watching DC at this time.
I'll show you my dark side.
That's actually a Tim Minchin song, which is very funny. So if Jim, if you don't have any other thoughts on the DC heroes that we've kind of already talked about, the next two, I again feel like we will be remiss if we don't mention, and that is the 2 Star Wars television series, what you might call the precursor to the Mandalorian, which is of course Star Wars Ewoks. We are the one big happy family. And Star Wars droids.
Wow.
And
this again is one of those that I never even knew existed. Like I don't remember them even. Were they Saturday?
I am totally in the same boat as you.
They were Saturday morning cartoons, and they were.
I didn't know they existed either. They were 30. Okay, so
droids. Like you didn't watch them. They were awful.
Yeah, they were supposed to be just terrible shows. So droids lasted 13 episodes, and Ewoks lasted. Ewoks got a second season, last 26 episodes.
That's
surprising. Bad. It's just bad. It's bad stuff. Sorry if you like it. If you like it, it's fine. But you like something that's bad.
On the
I had.
Go ahead, yeah.
I was gonna say I had a Wicket little kind of rubberized plastic figurine that came with a paint kit, and then you painted him to make him look like he was in the movie, and then it had glow paint. So you paint the paint on him to make him look like he did in the movie, and then you cover the whole thing in this glow paint that would when it dried, it was clear. but then at night it would glow. So as a kid, you know, and being into Star Wars, I was like, yeah, wicked. He's awesome. He's the greatest of all Ewoks.
That's not a high bar to clear.
I think glow in the dark is highly underutilized.
Is that a short joke?
Well, it could be that as well. I don't know. I am going to say something that might make Star Wars fans upset. I like the original New Hope. I like Empire Strikes Back. And that's about all I really like in the Star Wars universe. I think the Force.
If you really want to piss people off, you're going to say, and none of it was better than Deep Space Nine.
Well, I mean, it wasn't. Deep Space Nine was better than all that stuff. Deep Space Nine is better than anything that was ever made in the Star Wars universe. I'm sorry, but it was. You can like that stuff better, and it's fine. We don't have to fight about it. I'm just saying it was just better. No, that's not entirely true. I think I like the last one of the prequels, and I think I kind of liked Force Awakens a little bit. But basically everything else on Star Wars, I just have you guys watched the Book of Boba Fett?
Since this is a cartoon centric episode, I will say the Clone Wars cartoon is really good.
I've only watched a little bit of it, so I can't speak to that. Maybe that's the good one, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know. Did you guys watch the Book of Boba Fett?
I have not yet.
It's like it doesn't need to exist. There's no reason for it to be. Who wanted a Boba? Who gives a shit about Boba Fett? Who cares about Boba Fett?
Say this. I upset some of my fellow Star Wars fans by simply asking, why is there such a big deal about the Mandalorians? Why is it such a big deal? And they went on this whole tangent. I got like just a stream of comments, and I'm like, I still don't care.
All things considered, I liked The Mandalorian. I love the artwork at the end of it, and I'm a big Pedro Pascal fan. So
I didn't dislike The Mandalorian. In fact, I didn't even really dislike the Book of Boba Fett particularly. I just don't know why it exists. It's one of those things. I feel like a certain piece of media, of the Marvel shows recently, I feel like maybe Hawkeye is the worst at this. Like, I feel like you have to justify your existence a little bit as a piece of narrative fiction. Like, you have to be like, why are you here? And I feel like Hawkeye didn't do a very good job acknowledging why it was here. And I feel like the Book of Boba Fett did a terrible job acknowledging of why it's here. It's just like, they were just like, well, Boba Fett, people like him, even though he was clearly a terrible mercenary because he just fell into a pit. Like, he's supposed to be the best mercenary of all time. And like, somebody accidentally hit him and he fell in a pit. Like, he's not the best mercenary. He's not. He just fell in a pit. No, you don't get to be the best mercenary. I'm sorry.
But he's
the blue guy, isn't it?
Huh?
The blue guy. He's the one that's in the cartoon, the Clone Wars cartoon.
The blue guy's in Book of Boba Fett as well.
He's he's
Jango Fett.
No,
he's a blue alien. Again,
Yeah.
Star Wars fans are going to be screaming right now. What his name
Cad
is.
Bane.
Yeah.
Sure. The blue guy.
Yeah, he's great in the cartoon.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't feel like it I don't know. And plus they named Baby Yoda Grogu, and I'm just never going to forget how stupid a name that is. That's the stupidest name in the world.
Well, it can't be Baby Yoda. That's not a name.
Yeah, but it's better than freaking Grogu.
Why'd they have to name him?
Name him Steve, for God's sake. Don't name him Grogu. It sounds like just a noise you made in your throat after you ate a sandwich.
Now, Doug.
Why did they have to give Mando a name? Mando was just great.
Yeah, I don't care what his name is because Mandalorian's I don't know. It's fine. We're talking about Ewoks and droids, but why are we talking about Ewoks and droids?
I have a question. Why are you not supposed to take your helmet off? Why is that such a big deal?
Because they say so.
But apparently for some of them, it's not. I don't know. So on the toy front, I will add, this was the kind of the end of the Star Wars trilogy period. And these shows were so terribly unpopular and unsuccessful that the toys from the show were actually the most collectible Star Wars toys from this era.
That makes sense and makes me angry at the same time. They're like, the worst thing is the one that people love. It's like, oh God. Yeah, so Return of the Jedi would have come out in 83. So here we're a good 2 years past Return of the Jedi. So yeah, definitely on the outs of people talking about Star Wars. Well, I mean, not about the book. I mean, the books continue pretty much uninterrupted, but as far as big productions, this is it until what? When did the Phantom Menace come out? Like, what is it, 97? Something like that?
97, 98, 99, something.
Sorry. 99. Sorry, 99. Yeah, I don't know. Star Wars for me is just there's a lot more bad than good in Star Wars.
Phantom Menace has actually kind of grown on me over the years.
Well, nobody's perfect.
Just parts of it.
I just really, because like, The Last Jedi came out, and it's kind of a lightning rod movie because the fans hate it because it's different, and other people love it because it's different, and I just kind of dislike it because it's not very. I didn't think it was very good. And then I feel like J.J. Abrams somehow united the fandom with Rise of Skywalker by making sure that everybody hated it, and
I don't know. I didn't mind the first two movies of that series. The last one, I'm like,
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The last one,
5-year-old come up with a plot where the Emperor has like, the Emperor just has a gajillion ships and all of them can destroy everything.
Yeah, I win.
I don't know
why they did that. He's back because we think that's what fans want.
Yeah.
Well, they should have, to improve those three movies, they should have just left out the old characters altogether. Maybe had some guest appearances in the very first one and then just left them out.
Well, in my mind, and again, if I'm sure that the people at Disney really want my input on what to do with Star Wars, I think you should either go 1,000 years in the past or 1,000 years in the future. Just get the hell away from the events of that we're familiar with. Go do something in the New Republic or the Old Republic, or just get far outside of there. Tell a story that's completely unconnected, because right now they're telling us like things like, oh, what happened between this episode of the Clone Wars and this episode of the Clone Wars? And I'm like, you shouldn't make a show about that. Make a show about new characters or something different. Just like, oh my God, like in the Solo movie, they showed us where he got his vest.
Right.
Who gives a shit where he got his vest? Like, does anybody care where Han Solo got his vest?
So the thing that bothers me the most about this is they have a tremendous amount of material to pull from, because people have been writing Star Wars books for decades. Dark Horse did tremendous comic book series over all sorts of time periods. They've got a lot of intellectual property to work with.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they got stuff they could pull from. They could go back 1,000 years to the Old Republic, where there's no familiar characters at all. There's no Skywalkers, there's no Palpatines, there's no Solos, there's no Kenobis. It's just a bunch of people, and then you tell a story about them. But anyway, we should stop complaining about Star Wars and talk about one that I know is certain people's favorite villain, and that is the Thundercats. Brandon, do you have any particular characters that you like in Thundercats?
Yes, mumm-ra is arguably my all-time favorite. Maybe of any genre, that's very tentative, but he's very close. He's in the top 3 anyway of my all-time favorite bad guys in any show. I loved Old Man mumm-ra, directly out of the tomb mumm-ra, and transformed into buff mumm-ra.
Should spirits of evil transform this decayed form to mumm-ra, the ever-living?
I don't know. I thought they were all cool. I think I have a picture. I have 2 pictures that I got drawn at a Comic-Con of mumm-ra and the old man, the crypt keeper look. I always just thought he was awesome. I loved his voice. I loved the acting. Just perfect.
I had the sword, and I thought it was one of the coolest things I had as a kid, because you press the button and it lit up, which like today, that's like the stupidest thing where it's like, it's a little piece of plastic that has a light in the middle. But, you know, when you're 6 years old or 7 years old, that's like your prized possession.
Yeah.
So, Kale, I'm assuming you've also heard of Thundercats?
I've heard of it. I've heard of mumm-ra, the Ever Living, Lion-O. Yeah, there was a few of them. There's Tigra, was it Panthro?
Panthro.
And then what was the kid, the young one?
Two of them, Wily Kit and Wily Cat.
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
They were like twins, right?
Yep. And Snarf.
Snarf, yeah.
Snarf.
Oh, and I looked it up. It's the people that produced it are the same ones that did Rudolph, the claymation.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, apparently this was actually completed in 1983. So the first season was entirely in the can in 1983, and they just never put it on until 85. So it just, I guess, sat on a shelf for 2 years.
Dude, this would have blown everything out of the water in 1983.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be like predate. That'd be like basically the beginning of Transformers.
Did mumm-ra have any minions?
It's very unique too. It's a I don't know. It's a unique take on the fantasy genre. It's like all cats. Like we don't get involved with humans at all. And
so I don't think mumm-ra had any minions. There were the mutants, but they were from a different planet. I got the impression, correct me if I'm wrong, but the planet that this is all happening on, it seems like it's Earth. And the Thundercats came from Thundera and it got destroyed. And the mutants were from some planets near Thundera. And they all got shipwrecked on the planet where mumm-ra is. Do I have that right?
I'm looking right now. I mean that's definitely. I know the Thundercats came there from Thundera, but that's all I can remember. You guys keep talking. I'll look it up.
So I don't remember mumm-ra himself having minions. He kind of used the mutants as minions, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say there is a couple of bad guys, but I don't think they were like Bebop and Rocksteady. I don't think they were like. I mean, they were like Bebop and Rocksteady, but I don't think they specifically worked for mumm-ra.
Yeah.
So this was also published by Marvel under the Star Comics imprint, 1985, lasted for 3 years, 24 issues. So that's actually, I mean, by today's standards, honestly, you get a book that lasts 24 issues, you're doing pretty well. I can't really find anything about that. I apologize.
Sorry.
The Wikipedia page is not exhaustive.
So I will say that like my favorite cartoon Thundar, I feel like part of what drew me to Thundercats is that it has a little bit of creepy factor to it. Mumm-ra's kind of creepy. The mutants are a little bit creepy. For a kids cartoon, I thought was intriguing.
Yeah, mumm-ra especially. Like we were saying earlier, had my parents ever just taken the time to notice mumm-ra, I think that would have been banned pretty quickly. No, I always thought he was really cool looking. Like if I was any good at drawing, I would have had him on my, book covers and stuff at school.
So I remember watching they had like a 1 hour special. And I remember watching that when it aired and just being hooked right from the get-go. And that 1 hour special was them evacuating Thundera, the entire armada of ships being destroyed except for the one ship that had the Thundercat characters on it. And then they lost control and spiraled and ended up on this planet where mumm-ra was, and some of the mutants followed them there. So
I guess I never knew the backstory. Like I never knew mumm-ra, why he was even there or whatever.
Yeah, so mumm-ra has been there for forever, and he doesn't like it that other people are interloping. And the Thundercats are the last Thundercats of their planet, and so they're trying to reestablish their civilization.
Okay, I found this. Okay, so yeah, so the Thundercats come to a planet called Third Earth, and it begins with the people from Thundaria being attacked by the mutants of Plundar, which a little on the nose, but we'll accept it. And yeah, so then they fight.
Plunder.
How could you?
Thundar.
I really don't think you should make those kind of racist assumptions about the Plundarians, Kale. It's very offensive.
Just so you know, right now I have Thundar thighs.
I was wondering if those were thunder thighs. That was so rude and hysterical.
So Thundercats lasted 4 seasons, 130 episodes, and I didn't know this. They did a reboot in 2011.
Really? Who did?
I'm gonna see. Looks like it says Warner Bros. Animation.
Thundercats!
But they also did kind of a strange thing. So it's funny. It looks kind of more anime inspired. I know Thundercats by is kind of a little anime inspired anyway, but it's kind of more anime inspired. And then there's another thing in 2020 called Thundercats Roar. Which looks to me like it is more like a younger audience kind of thing.
You know, when you bring up the animation specifically, the animation in Thundercats was pretty evolved for the time, I think. Most of the stuff that they were drawing, like Transformers and G.I. Joe and that, was pretty blocky, you know, it was very hard lined and stuff. Whereas Thundercats was a lot more flowing. It was a lot more natural looking.
Yeah, no, I think the animation was very good. Sorry, I'm just looking this up. Yeah, so Thundercats Roar it's sort of like a young adult version of Thundercats. Everything's more like if you've seen the DC kitty superhero kind of stuff, it's like Art Balthazar, like that kind of art style. In fact, it might be Art Balthazar, but
they cutified it.
Yeah, it's like a cutie version of the Thundercats. Might be a good entry point for younger kids. It looks like it has all the characters and everything.
Get them hooked on mumm-ra.
Mumm-ra looks adorable.
Like mumm-ra plushies.
He looks adorable.
Ancient spirits of evil.
Transform.
Oh, mumm-ra.
Oh, the ever living.
He could say things like Teddy Ruxpin and his eyes will glow and little hair thing will go.
Well, do you guys have anything final to say about the Cats Which Thunder?
Yeah, I always thought it was very cool. I mean, even like generally speaking, as a kid, I went for the bad guys. But even on the Thundercats, even the good guys were fun. Like Lion-O and his hold the thing up next to his eye so he could get powers or whatever. Yeah, I always thought that was cool too.
Yeah, I like that. I like Panthro. I always thought he seemed like a badass.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit like G.I. Joe, they kind of emphasize different characters, different episodes. I mean, not the cast of characters that G.I. Joe had, but they made it so Lion-O wasn't like the main hero all the time. Also,
wasn't there
an interesting twist with Lion-O is that his suspension pod and the spaceship malfunctioned, and so his body grew old while he was in the suspension pod. So he's still a child, like the age of Wile E. Kit and Wile E. Cat, but he has an adult body. And because of royal inheritance, he's the leader. So it's kind of interesting twist.
By the way, there was a 1987 Atari video game based on Thundercats.
I did not know that.
It doesn't look great. And there's also a Thundercats game from 2012 for the Nintendo DS. So yeah. 85, I think, was kind of a big year. Kind of when I was looking at the shows in there, I thought it was gonna be kind of a big year, and it was. So We got through it. It's a lot of good stuff there. So you should check it out. Again, I'm going to try and post links to one of the things I was going to say about G.I. Joe before we go. Hasbro on their YouTube channel has put up a ton of those episodes just on their channel, full G.I. Joe episodes, which I think is kind of cool. And they're commercial free and everything. Well, assuming you have Amazon Premium. Yeah, it's really neat. And there's other, there's a lot of other shows that have their episodes up, and I'll try to post some links to those and just watch them. It's just cool. It's cool. You can see all that stuff, for free on YouTube. Yeah.
Really cool. The things you can find on YouTube, like this show,
or like the fan cut of the 1980 Dune movie,
which, yes.
Ancient spirits of evil.
Brand, do you have any final thoughts other than summoning ancient spirits of evil?
No. Well, I know there's just a lot of them that I didn't know anything about, but it's probably worth watching all of them, and certainly worth watching Thundercats at any rate.
Probably not Ewoks or droids. I wouldn't bother with those, but it's up to you. Jim?
I feel like this is kind of the pinnacle of year of animated cartoons in the 80s, because the afternoon cartoons were at their pinnacle with the Transformers, G.I. Joe, Thundercats, and the Saturday morning cartoons were still going strong. And it's a little bit downhill from here.
I think there's a pretty darn good one coming up in 1987. But we'll get there.
1989 is The Simpsons.
Is The Simpsons 89? I thought it was a little earlier than that. Kale?
Hasn't it been on forever?
Lino called all the other cats with a giant laser pointer.
Got it.
That's what cats like.
By the way, Brand, you're right. The Simpsons started out in 1989. But I remember The Simpsons when they were on the Tracy Ullman show, which would have been probably a couple of years earlier than that, because they were The Simpsons started off as just like a recurring thing on that. And for some reason, my camera's turned me orange. Not sure why.
I was also very much into models. I built a lot of plastic models, and I did build a Bigfoot model from back when we were talking about earlier.
Do you like this model behind me? It was a Robotech example model kit.
He's got a helicopter for a head.
It's not a helicopter for a head. It's transporting him around, fool.
Helicopter head.
I actually kind of preferred it if you had a helicopter for a head. It's awesome.
The Robo Mech Warrior dropship.
You could pick up the spice mines and just run away.
All right. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you next week. Please have a good drink. Have a good day. Everybody.
Actually, I don't have any idea what this thing is. Let's see if it works like this!